Like,
You want me to make a pot of coffee?
no, you're good, man. I just went down, I didn't think I was. I was cold too.
Like 30 seconds.
I'll be right back.
Thank you. Where are you going?
I'm gonna go get the key to turn the AC up just a little bit.
We're live, guys, just so you know.
No, you're good, man. I just went down, I didn't think I was. I was cold.
I'll be right back.
Where are you going?
I'm gonna go get the key.
We're live, guys, just so you know.
No, you're good, man. I just went down, I didn't think I was.
Yeah, we're live.
I'll be right back. I'm gonna go get the key.
Oh, that's feeding back.
Yeah, recorded or what?
We're live, guys.
It's the front so.
Yeah, we're live.
It looks like it's cold in there, ladies,
It's freezing.
Oh.
as usual.
It's freezing. Can they serve that at the budget? Yeah, Ray will be asking. Look, I made a little snack pack for us. Wait. This is a good stuff. It's all at the bottom.
Is that pulled pork? Pulled pork here, managed to.
Yes, I just put my hands, don't worry.
Really?
Every one of them is pretzels and yogurt raisins.
That's for that.
Bring it in. Here.
I don't want that. Yeah. You got money that has
We need to get the show on the road, Fran.
I'm sorry.
We need to get the show on the road.
Whenever you're ready and everybody's ready. Is everybody ready to go?
Yeah. Ready to go.
Everybody's ready to go.
Okay. Coming out of open session at 6:43, according to my watch. No action needed on the matters that were discussed. So we'll close this executive session and move on to item 6, which is our consent agenda. All items on this agenda may be enacted by one motion. We're talking about item A, City Council meeting minutes, March 23, 2020, April 4, 2020, and B, a resolution renaming renewing contract with Family Counseling Service beginning August 1, 2020, ending July 31, 2021, setting fees for service and training along with retainer rate, authorizing the city manager to sign said contract.
Motion to approve.
Okay.
Second.
Joan, did you second?
Second.
Call the roll.
Councilmember Holt,
Yes.
Councilmember Crawford,
Yes.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Owens,
Yes.
Councilmember Salamine,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Moore,
Yes.
Mayor Bouillon.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Hey, item number 7. 7C, discuss and take action on a request by Jeff Lampkin, DBA Cinnamon Shore, to move the approved convention center hotel from Cinnamon Shore number 2, location to the new Newport on the bay side of State Highway 1.
525.
Do you want to
Any
jump in?
comments, concerns?
So I'm Daniel Mazak with Cinnamon Shore to do a brief introduction on the request to relocate the hotel and conference center project to the Bayside Marina location.
Let's see if you can hear. He can't hear you. These mics are off, Ram. They were all on earlier, now they're all off.
Mine's on.
I have them all on. He's gonna have to get really close to the mic.
Hello?
Is that better?
Especially with mask. All right. So Daniel Mazak speaking on behalf of Cinnamon Shore in regards to the hotel and conference center proposed location on the marina Bayside that's on today's agenda. So this proposed location is located on a marina site in a existing PUD development with a hotel site and mixed use development plans of appropriate density for this type of project. We feel it would be an ideal location to locate the hotel and conference center project at this location. It's about 2.25 miles closer than the prior location. And we believe the marine activity and fishing, boating, and bay views are appropriate for a project like this in the city of Port Aransas. And this is the location which we would like to propose that project. As well as to ask for an extension on.
That's not on here.
No, on here. Okay, that's it.
Any other comments?
Well, I have a question. Just
Bruce,
hypothet-
could you speak a little bit
Yes, ma'am.
closer to the mic?
Mr. Mather, and I don't know if you can speak to me, but hypothetically, this gets voted down, are they still going to, would they continue with the hotel in the present location?
So the present location poses some challenges in terms of timing for the project. So it would take longer to execute in the prior location than it would in this new location because we would be doing some PUD amendments in conjunction with developing that site. And then we would still pursue the project. We're definitely interested in partnering with the city and developing this hotel and conference center. But the proposed location is the location that we feel would be quicker to finance, execute, and develop.
Okay, thank you.
Did you say it'd be quicker to develop?
Yes, the proposed location, we believe, would save us at least 6 months off of planning and plating efforts because it's kind of a raw slate with an existing PUD already on it, and the proposed use fits within the existing PUD's allowable uses versus in the Cinnamon Shore South location, the mixture of uses we had proposed in that area was mixed use, commercial, and activities like that, but we didn't specifically have a hotel site planned there. So we were considering that to be a request to requiring coming to council.
I got another question now, and this is not really germane to approval or not, but a lot of the comments where people were saying when they bought in Cinnamon Shore North, they were not anticipating a conference center as part of their HOA. Have y'all addressed that with, I read y'all sent on the packet at a town hall meeting, but and I even saw some people had withdrawn their comments. Is the majority of people happy now? Do you feel with
Oh, Bruce, speak up.
Mayor's having a hard time hearing you.
starting to feedback?
Mayor, the question from Bruce was, there was a lot of comments from the HOA people in Cinnamon Shore, and he was wondering about those comments relating to the hotel convention center being built in Cinnamon Shore South.
So to answer that question, presently, we do believe that overall this project is a net benefit to all of the Cinnamon Shore owners, whether they're in Cinnamon Shore North or South. And it's important to remember that at this time, the project is proposed as a Cinnamon Shore branded facility. And at this time, there's been no discussion or planning as to whether that project is part of Cinnamon Shore North or not. At this time, it's just a property we're acquiring. It's not presently part of Cinnamon Shore North.
That's why I was just, that was just like, I have big stack of comments in there. I was like, we bought this not realizing that we're gonna have a HOA with a convention center. That's the only question. And more for the people who are listening in.
David, repeat what Bruce said.
Well, Bruce was curious as to all the comments, and I think there was maybe 10 or so of the comments from various owners within the existing Cinnamon Shore. I imagine they're mostly all in the north, the older Cinnamon Shore. And, it was kind of odd because a lot of them commented that they didn't want a hotel conference center. So it was almost as if they were not even aware that it's already been approved. Maybe they're new owners, or I don't know, it was kind of strange because they necessarily weren't commenting on it moving to this new site. They just didn't want one anywhere almost.
I got that as well.
Yeah. Which it's a little late for that.
Yes, kind of, step the boat sail on that.
So we plan to be very active in engaging with our owners in the conversations regarding the project. I know some were frustrated that they felt like this all happened quickly. And, we did our best to provide responses in a reasonable time to owner questions. Spent a lot of time preparing a Q&A to answer all the questions I had been receiving. And we got a lot of positive feedback as a result of that Q&A, that people felt like they had a better understanding of the project as a result. There's still a lot to be planned, but we think that the property offers us opportunities to remedy solutions and alleviate current strain on things like parking and amenity usage, rather than trying to compound it and pack more people in the same spot. This is a new facility. It'll come with it new amenities that can service that crowd, and try not to put all of that through Cinnamon Shore North.
Well, Daniel, you guys will be saving up to 6 months on one of the bullet points on an email we received. So from a time frame, if it was to transition over to this other location, any idea of estimation of what time frame you think you guys would, if ever, just a guesstimate on when it might get completed?
Right. So for completion, I think we're looking at about 3 years from now, spending about the next year and a half. And that's, don't take that as final, but spending the remainder of this year plus next year executing the agreement and getting approval from the state comptroller. And then concurrent to that, working on the planning and infrastructure improvements for the marina and to create the site. And then some of the initial architectural work and planning, bidding, financing, securing all of that in order to do the hotel project. And then we'd expect at least 18 months to 2 years to build the facility. So could be looking 3 to 3.5 years.
And if it was to stay in the current place, you're saying will be some PUD amendments coming down the road probably?
Yeah, I'd probably tack another 6 months on to that, probably 2 months in planning and administrative work to produce a PUD amendment to propose that new location. And then P&Z review and 3 council readings.
The footprint going to be similar?
Yes, actually. So the proposed location, we took the exact same plans that we had for the prior location and took that facility, which was about 4 stories with a 5th floor. That's about half the mass of the structure, which was basically a rooftop, like a sunset bar area, and then plopped that on the marina site and showed adjacent to that conference center facility. And in our current proposal, that is split into kind of 2 facilities, about 1,500 square foot grand ballroom and 4,500 square foot junior ballroom. And all 3 of those would be situated waterfront on the
His
marina
wireless mic is
Okay, thanks. All right. Do I hear a motion on this particular item?
Well, I'm gonna make a motion to approve as stated.
Okay, second?
Councilmember Crawford,
Yes.
Councilmember Holt,
Yes.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Owens,
Yes.
Councilmember Salamine,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Moore,
Yes.
Mayor Bouillon.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay, item D. Presentation on stormwater management improvement for Chance Sparks and team from Freeze and Nichols.
There's our Colleen to kick it off.
Hey guys, I'm just gonna give a little intro, a short one, so everybody's on the same page. We've got a stormwater improvement project that we've been working on since October. The GLO awarded us $100,000 as part of a $168,000 project to do a data review of our flood and drainage and water quality issues in the community. This was spearheaded by Councilwoman Holt. and Ray Mooney, Rick Adams. There's a whole team of advisory board, an advisory group that's formed to work on this. We've got players from the Mission Aransas Reserve, Sarah Cunningham. We've had council people, Beth and Chuck Crawford involved. Planning and zoning, Frank Morgan. We've got Jim Urban on board. Garrett Kipke, Judy Parker, Cliff Strain. We've got some people from the community that have kind of helped frame this out and put this together. The Fries and Nichols team, Chance Sparks is going to join the call. I see he's on Zoom, and his teammates are here to kind of go over this report, show you what's in front of you. I know you may not have had a lot of time to look it all over and read it in detail, so they're going to summarize it for you and kind of give the takeaway that we're hoping for is your feedback on this. I know it's an odd time with COVID and everything else going on, but because this is a grant project from the General Land Office, we're kind of held to a timeline here that we have to keep things moving. And so that's why we're talking about this tonight. But I won't delay it any further, and I'll let Chance take over. And if you guys have any questions, he and his team are prepared to answer that for you, okay?
All right, thank you, Colleen. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Well, I will try to. I need the host to enable screen sharing for me. In the meantime, just want to give you a brief update on where we have been on this project. Colleen gave you a good overview of the GLO funding and some of those aspects. So the team that we bring with us today is, of course, myself. I'm Chance Sparks. I am an urban planning project manager with Fries and Nichols, and then we have 3 other members of our group that are also on the call listening, and will hopefully be able to help me answer questions along the way. Those include Blaine Laughlin, Christina McLaren, and also Kim Patak out of a few of our different offices. All right, looks like it is ready for me to share. All right, so this is our team. So I actually know what all of us look like now, and not just me. And we also have a big team that's also behind us of landscape architects and other stormwater engineers, coastal and environmental practices, kind of the whole spectrum of the group. So the first deliverable out of this project is a stormwater management report. This is essentially a diagnostic report on the different documents that we were to review as part of this project, as well as some of our own experience and research, Port Aransas's current practices, and then what we identified as conceptual solutions. So like a diagnostic of your code regulations in order to take steps towards the improvement of stormwater management in Port Aransas. So the purpose of this is really threefold. It's to look at reducing non-point source pollution, achieve better resiliency in flooding that a result of both improper drainage and high tides. This goes to disaster resiliency, of course. And then working on citizen buy-in. So Fries and Nichols' main role is in these first 2 items, with the rest of the group pulling in the rest. This began with an initial data review that began with the guidance for sustainable stormwater management on the Texas coast. So you'll see this referred to a few times throughout the presentation. Things that are directly sourced to that, we've thrown an asterisk on. The important things to know, though, is that Port Aransas does have an impaired body, the Gulf of Mexico, and it's for contact and fish. The main issues are related to bacteria and inedible tissues, things like that. So that's really what this is driving towards with water quality management. The downtown area is your most developed area right now, with most of your significant vacancy is more on the west side of the city, west and south. But what's really important is to make adjustments now in order to avoid exacerbating current challenges. So We want to address stormwater challenges up front because that makes development really better for everybody involved. It can actually make development a little bit easier if you have a thoughtful process that applies across the board. If you structure these things right, it can be a cost neutral issue for the projects. And probably what's really most important is that these stormwater issues don't just go away if you don't address them up front with regulations. You end up addressing them down the road. So our goal is to help avoid these issues being borne by the citizens at large. This helps you to keep tax rates lower, and things like that. So throughout this whole effort, we recognize the kind of the culture of Port Aransas, what your capacity is to administer different types of regulations, and your development goals of the city. And we prepared all this with that in mind. So when we look at the future land use map, we see that most of the undeveloped area was going to be low to medium residential, except for a few infill projects. This is due for an update in order to better address some best practices that have emerged, particularly post-hurricanes and post-recession. But it does contain recommendations that are consistent with the goals of this project to reduce stormwater management. We also spent a lot of time going through NOAA data, and it's no surprise, of course, that Port Aransas as a coastal city was significantly affected by Hurricane Harvey. But also, we need to keep in mind, it's not possible to prevent the impacts from tropical storms. But with really thoughtful stormwater management, you can become more resilient. The goal here is to reduce storm damage, and the idea is that you bounce back a lot faster. This allows you to restart that economic engine rapidly after a major disaster. We also look at sea level rise and what that might mean for the city. The first aspect of this is vulnerability. This is whether you have citizens that are socioeconomically vulnerable in a sea level rise scenario. Again, most of this is the developed area of Port Aransas and is a medium degree of vulnerability. We also look at the flood frequency for what happens in a sea level scenario. Most of the areas that are identified are lower level areas on the bay side. And this is where hurricanes talk to each other a little bit. So if you recall Hurricane Ike that hit Galveston, it was a demonstration that a hurricane that, despite its status as a Category 2, caused catastrophic flooding due to the counterclockwise hurricane winds. It caused bayside flooding. This is something that is a potential scenario in Port Aransas to be aware of going forward. We also looked at sea level rise scenarios. This is an interactive tool. You'll note that it identifies Rockport as our point. So this particular model has various set points. There wasn't one set point for Port Aransas. It's included in the Rockport set point. You can adjust the year. You can adjust assumptions on this to see how it impacts Port Aransas. And then finally, we look at wetland migration. And this shows what happens as you have sea level rise. And what we see here is that the saltwater marshes and wetlands that are particularly on the bay side are lost in this scenario and migrate inland. That moves us into some of the different documents that we reviewed throughout this process. So we reviewed a variety of different approaches to stormwater management. These range from coastal areas to hill country flood zone areas, and a little bit of everything in between. These all bring different tools to the table. For example, the San Antonio River Authority had 3 different scales of implementation so that you could tailor the approach to low impact development and green stormwater infrastructure to the scenario. When we looked at Escambia County, which is, if you're familiar with the 38 communities along the panhandle of Florida, they had information about floating wetlands and mats that can be used in detention ponds that we thought was applicable in Port Aransas. We also looked elsewhere. We look at North Central Texas Council of Government. They have a detailed design criteria manual. EPA provides a lot of suitable best practices. And then there's a few others. You see Blue Water Baltimore, as well as City of Virginia Beach on here. That brought us some examples of how to use multi-department task forces. And also in Virginia Beach in particular, it looked at flood resiliency as a key economic issue. Virginia Beach has a lot of similarities economically to how Port Aransas operates. And that brings us to the existing practices in Port Aransas. So there's some great things that you're doing now that are really helping you out. That's having designated wildlife areas and nature preserves. Those include the Leonabelle Turnbull Birding Center, and then also some private undeveloped wetlands. Also, the master plan for the city assumes a 20% impervious cover. This is very low. That could be good, but you also have to be careful of sprawl impacts. This can also drive other issues like traffic management. So one of the things that we'll want to look at in the future is this realistic? Is it matching the desired pattern and the pattern you've been seeing? We also identified some great opportunities for improvement. These include looking at your drainage design manual assumptions to see whether it is in fact economically feasible to design beyond the 2-year storm, which is what the current requirement is. We also saw street specifications that are tending to result in higher levels of impervious cover that might be necessary. There's also, we see permitting and platting processes where there's missed opportunities to address issues that can become a problem. An example that seems really minor is fences. Those only trigger a permit when they're 8 feet tall. But if somebody builds a fence inappropriately, it can actually act as a dam and redirect water onto neighbors' properties. Finally, we also looked at the landscape ordinance and what your most recent effort, which it made substantial improvements in how to administer, but we also see some other opportunities within that to promote green stormwater infrastructure. That leads us into our conceptual solutions. So the beginning of this that we looked at is that there's no need to reinvent the wheel. There's several permits and reviewing agencies that already exist, and the city can use those as its approach to address the stormwater infrastructure of Port Aransas. There are 3 key ones that we've identified out of this. They include the Stormwater Pollution Prevention Plan system. That's administered by TCEQ, and then the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers has Section 404 Clean Water Act permits. And that is actually where multiple agencies inject themselves into the process. And then finally, there's a general land office that has permitting and requirements to deal with disturbance of state submerged land. So these are all permit processes where you can step in and serve as either an enforcement arm, or you can modify them slightly to be more applicable to Port Aransas. Also, one of the things that we kept in mind with this is that right now, Port Aransas is not what we call an MS4 community. That's a special set of federal requirements that can come into play administered by the state when you become an urbanized area. You didn't catch that in the last census. You are very likely to catch that in the upcoming census. Some of your neighboring communities already are, such as Aransas Pass, as well as Corpus Christi. That means that some practices are already common in the region and are familiar to developers. So we want to make sure that we stick with things that can be familiar or are not a large leap beyond what they are used to working with. We also looked at some of the non-regulatory ideas. One of the things that we saw come out of this is a task force where you have multiple departments involved, and that encourages collaboration and consistent mindfulness of stormwater management. So this takes it beyond a development area and perhaps into your public works operations, how you design capital projects. Also, community involvement and awareness, they will help increase the adoption of green stormwater infrastructure and sustainability. And these can be really simple efforts about educating on proper landscaping, how you should be fertilizing your land in a way that doesn't have offstream impact or offsite impacts, how to be thoughtful about integrated pest management, things like that, that can help every citizen become a participant without it costing a lot of money. Also, education is just a huge opportunity in general. We see lots of opportunities that are common elsewhere that we haven't seen in Port A. You know, things like signage about litter reduction, information about beach passes. You can even turn this into part of your branding efforts or even public art efforts if that's of interest. We see examples here of customized stormwater covers. These don't cost extra because they're having to order these anyway with development. You just have a custom stamp that they make sure to spec when they call up East Jordan Iron Works to get these done. You can also just apply medallions to stormwater inlets. These are very minor cost items that help educate. Then we, of course, looked at regulations. So these are the four sets of regulations that we see as being involved, as well as some of these that may be new ordinances altogether, which is fine. So most of these recommendations, they can be done a couple of different ways. They can be done as hard regulatory requirements, or you can adjust them where they have some offset that addresses a loss of ability to use land or cost of development. In a culture like Port Aransas, we think that second approach is probably the best approach in order to promote and encourage green stormwater infrastructure. A good example is if you're asking a developer to preserve sensitive areas of the site, then you can actually allow them to develop the rest of their site maybe a little bit more intensely. So that way they're not actually losing any of their rights, they're just shifting their rights around on the land. We also tend to encourage this for cities that are new to stormwater management like this. It helps with buy-in. It turns your developers into partners instead of adversaries. There's also opportunities looking at redevelopment. So you can build in incentive programs that can help you get sites, one, back into productive use, but also improve their appearance and address stormwater all at the same time. And this can be done through, direct things like tax incentives, but also regulatory incentives where you say, hey, if you make these improvements, then you don't have to do this other thing. A good example that we've seen elsewhere is if a place adopts better stormwater practices, maybe they have a reduced parking standard, or maybe they get some kind of utility fee rebate or something like that. Recognizing that that's a little bit limited in Port Aransas since your water and wastewater is a separate entity, but you can work with other tools as well. You also have permit processes that can create these opportunities. There's been some major changes in state law regarding platting that need to be addressed in some of your ordinances anyway, involving the speed of plat approval and things like that. But also having some opportunities to do checks on fences, so that way you're not exacerbating problems with really minor improvements. It's a case of installing that fence. It makes a huge difference if that fence has an 1.5 inch gap at the bottom of it to help avoid issues. We also want to look at efforts to protect the existing environment. So one of the things you could do is you could require identification and preservation of certain types of land. It could be wetlands, erodible soils, critical habitat. And the city can then have a requirement that prioritizes this preservation of things like natural depressions, storage, and buffers. You see that like against the dune areas. And again, when you do this, you can look at offsetting this or squeezing the property development onto a smaller portion of the site. This helps to preserve your ecosystems because your best stormwater management is your natural stormwater management that you already have. And they can also result in even more attractive developments. Taken to an extreme approach, we've seen places that have done what we call transfers of development rights, where say a property owner has a huge chunk of their site that is encumbered with these different sensitive areas. They could actually sell their development rights to another property. That property can then be developed a little bit more intensely. That's a way to help address some of those balance issues and turn your developers into partners in the process. There's also things like litter ordinances, helping with styrofoam prohibitions, things like that can help to address a variety of issues. You can also look at construction practices, things like trying not to disturb the site more than it has to be disturbed. You can do these as incentives where the undisturbed areas count towards minimum landscape areas. You can also one of the things that we would recommend is requiring pre-project meetings. These don't cost anything extra, but it gets everybody on the same page between the city, the developers, the contractors to know what's expected of them during the construction process. Good communication benefits everybody. We certainly want to encourage that. And also you can look at some of the inspection involved as well. Things like having a certified inspector that monitors, throughout the city on construction projects can help avoid problems in the future. You can also look at development design. We do think that it may be appropriate to look at increasing your design storm for drainage design. That's part of what's contributed to some of the challenges there. Creating some green stormwater criteria, again, perhaps structured as incentives. Also look at requiring mitigation when that impervious area jumps above that 20% assumption can help. So that way, if they're compliant, great. If they're going a little bit over, then you have a way to deal with it where you're not having more offsite impacts. It allows you to have some predictability in how you design your stormwater infrastructure. You can also look at changing some of your street design standards, which we have also recommended. These, of course, can take a number of shapes throughout this. You can have shared driveways encouraged. You can do reduced widths, reduced setbacks, things like that can help reduce impervious cover. Adding rain gardens as islands and cul-de-sacs, and even using permeable pavement. Of course, we recognize that there's a high water table in Port Aransas, but that's why we usually suggest several small changes used together, with the goal being that between all of them, you can make some impact to the situation. You can look at things like cluster development as a way to help preserve large areas of open space. That helps with biofiltration, as well as and infiltration to the extent it's available. You can also look at how to apply this in commercial areas. That usually opens up new opportunities. A lot of these will just look like regular landscaping. A properly designed vegetative filter strip just looks like a really nice piece of landscaping. It has some flowers, it's green, but it has a dual purpose of being able to help filter out pollutants and things like that. So if you're having to do landscaping anyway, you might as well have it do something productive along the way. You can also, we would suggest deploying incentives to the extent possible. There's several types that are identified. Port Aransas does not have a stormwater utility fee. That is not an impact fee. I want to make sure that's understood. It would be something that would normally appear on a utility bill. Port Aransas could create something like that, then use it as a tool where it gets discounted when certain minimum stormwater design and discharge metrics are met for a project. That can help encourage retrofitting as well. We also had a few other observations, one being that your comprehensive plan is aging. We also observed that your development-related ordinances, they've been put together over the span of a couple of decades. This results in them being a little bit disjointed, so we see a need to look at rewriting those, doing some streamlining. Again, you don't have to do those right now. We just see that need. There's also some opportunities to enhance your flood damage prevention regulations, to implement some best practices. And also we saw a need that there's a variety of capital projects that Port Aransas is going to have to look at to address their existing problems. The reason we mention this is because there are new funding sources that are becoming available. The first of these is the Community Development Block Grant Mitigation Program. This can of course be used for capital projects, and Port Aransas is eligible for these under a few different enabling acts for this, so great candidate. But what we really want to point out is that you can use this not only for doing drainage infrastructure improvements, you can actually use these funds to make improvements to things like your comprehensive plan, all of your ordinances together across the board. And that's in addition to drainage infrastructure itself. And also there is the Texas Water Development Board has the Flood Infrastructure Fund. This is a new program administered by the Texas Water Development Board that is trying to create statewide effort to address long-term stormwater impacts statewide. The basic summary of that is the state has recognized that they're they're tired of constantly having to do the same things over and over again. They would love to get some preventative measures in place. So those are a few tools to know about that are out there. We recognize that the Port Aransas City Council and Mayor have had a lot on their plate the last couple of weeks. I can imagine with the COVID issues and things like that going on that perhaps stormwater wasn't the number one thing on your list, and that's okay. So what we'd like to ask you to do is the draft that was provided, spend the next couple of weeks going through it and reach back out to Colleen on or before July 31st with any thoughts and comments that you have on it. We are planning to add a couple of references or a couple of recommendations to that draft. For example, you heard me mention the transfer of development rights, but that's really what we're looking for from you as the city council and mayor. So if there's any questions that we can assist with right now, I'm happy to help. We do have other team members on the phone. I'm not sure if they're easily unmutable, but if not, we've got a chat going in the background so that they can pass me answers if needed. Thanks.
Jones on mute.
Well, thank you for all of that. A lot of information. I have read through it, of course, but not with the detail that I need to try to figure out where we need to go next and we can do. And I guess also the advisory committee has to spend some time putting some input as well. After this, what are the next steps going to be?
Sure. So the next steps on this, once we feel like we've got the buy-in on this report, is we'll take steps into crafting the final stormwater plan for this, and we'll start moving into putting together ordinance language to actually implement several of these recommendations. One of the things that we'll need to figure out is it done as a single ordinance, or does it end up being multiple ordinances? Because it'll touch multiple areas of your code. We want to make sure that we are as transparent as possible in that process.
Well, at some point, the plan is to have the public brought in and I guess get their input more as well, but also to tell them what you found and for them to understand what the issues might be. And of course, by then we hope to have some ideas of how we can get them to understand how they can help to make it better.
Chance, this is Dave Parsons, City Manager. Is it possible that you and your team, if we're looking at this whole thing, adopting something this large all at one time is kind of a big lift for the city. Could you possibly, just so that we could look at it, do like a phased in approach of like, if we were to phase this thing in, how would that, it'd be like a pyramid, what needs to be first, what would be second, what would be third, and just like a strategy for us to over a time to keep adding segments of this in. Is that something you could, just like create a draft for us somehow, so that we get an idea of how to digest everything and how we could implement this and bring it into our codes?
Sure, that is absolutely something we can do. We call those decision packages usually, where you group certain things together so that they have a really good impact, and then you can kind of build on them. So what we could do in that scenario is create groups of ordinances or ordinance language and say, okay, here's kind of your first step, and then when you're comfortable with that, this is what your second and third and fourth steps would look like, where the language is already built, and all you have to do is just drop it into your normal ordinance adoption format. You can absolutely do that.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? So you got a homework assignment, a couple weeks. Try to get your edits in. And great job, Colleen and Chance and your team. Really appreciate your guys' effort. I know it's been a rough. I know you guys have been going at this for a while. We've had a lot of interruptions in the state and here at city staff too. So we're constantly juggling things, but we appreciate your guys' effort on that.
Absolutely. I wish I was there in person. I'd hoped when we took on this project, I'd get to do a little fishing. That hasn't happened yet.
All right. Okay. Thanks, you guys. Thanks,
Thank
Colleen.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
No, I haven't really jumped into it, Wendy, so. If anyone can find money, Colleen's really good at it.
Yeah, I
So,
know, she's really good at it.
so she'll be definitely, between her and Ray and her team, if anyone's gonna find it, it's gonna be her.
Great, if we could, start implementing lots of money to do some of these projects.
Yeah.
Be awesome.
Joan, did you hear that?
No.
I didn't.
Joan, we were talking about, Wendy asked, what's the possibility of applying for and getting some more money through the CDB? And I responded, I didn't know, but between Colleen and Ray and her team, if anyone's going to find it, they could find it.
Yeah, that's true. And when we first put this proposal through, Ray was with the Coastal Bend Bays and Estuaries program, and we got her involved at that point. And she's just great at doing proposal writing, and we all know Colleen is too. So you're exactly right.
Yeah, so we'll keep moving forward. If you guys could get your comments in, and we'll start the money looking hunting process.
Okay, let's move on then. Item E. No dune permit. BFDP 20-0095. Discuss and take action to confirm the application submitted by Mustang Island Development Incorporated to allow the construction of multiple single-family residences complete with amenities, landscaping, driveway, pools, etc., located at 5800 Highway 361, Cinnamon Shore South, is consistent with the city's coastal management plan.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. So just a quick recap for Councilman Solomon, just to outline how this process works. Dune permit application is typically prepared by a professional engineer in almost all instances, then reviewed by another professional engineer on our behalf, on the city's behalf, before it gets to planning and zoning, and then reviews all of that documentation, including the application, and makes a recommendation to council. What they're looking at is, again, the same thing that we asked, or the city council is required to look at, which is the consistency with our coastal management plan, which essentially mirrors the natural resource code. It specifies how any construction activities in the dune protection area need to proceed. Once planning and zoning has favorably reviewed the dune permit, at that point it's sent to the general land office according to our own coastal management plan and their requirements for their review, just to see if there's anything else. And very oftentimes the general land office, they have a pretty outstanding group. They'll look at that and make sure that even the reconciliation between the two engineers that are normally involved is consistent. And we find oftentimes that there's some tweaks or clarification and just some additional information that is required before we'll bring it to planning and zoning. So I just want to preface that because I'll be presenting three permits in a row. So I just the process is the same in each one. And if there's not, like I said, reconciliation, then obviously the recommendations are different. But by the time it gets here, all parties, the engineers and the general land office and staff have all been satisfied that it is consistent with our with our coastal management plan. That's usually how the recommendation will end up being, is that we'll recommend approval based on that consistency. So with that preface, we'll get to the first one that the mayor read. And this is what we call a no-dune permit, no-dune determination. And this particular one for Cinnamon Shore South is its original genesis was a full dune permit with all the mitigation documents during the initial presentation of that development. Subsequent to that, a dune permit's good for 3 years. Once it expires, provided the work has all been done and no dunes are reestablished, the applicant is required to come back for a no dune determination, just to indicate that in that particular area, there are no critical dunes, all the mitigation's been complete, no dunes have reestablished. That's the case here. This is a successor to the full dune permit that Cinnamon Shore South presented several years ago. The mitigation work was done. Actually, my assistant Nicole and I actually went to the site and we inspected it. It's a fairly extensive site, obviously, but did confirm that there are no dunes reestablished. There are no critical dunes in the area, and that's the permit you have before you. Again, the documents do show the General Lands Office, pretty standard language, and make sure the mitigation is completed within 3 years. We watch it, and all of those things. So with that said, planning and zoning recommended approval, and we do as well. Staff does as well.
Mr. Walls is available if anybody has any questions.
That's Will Walls from Urban Institute.
He's the reviewing.
He's the applicant.
Oh, applicant.
Motion to approve.
Second.
There was a motion to approve, and I think Shannon seconds that.
Mayor, did you hear?
No, I can't hear a thing.
Yeah, there was a motion to approve and seconded.
Okay. Call a roll.
Councilmember Holt,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Moore,
Yes.
Councilmember Solomon,
Yes.
Councilmember Owens,
Yes.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Crawford,
Yes.
Mayor Bouillon.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay, item number F. Rick, you might as well stay up there. Is a dune permit, BFDP 200976. Discuss and take action to confirm the application submitted by Bill Ott, BBD, to allow the construction of multiple single-family residences with typical residential amenities, driveways, utilities, irrigation lines, associated land, etc., and a dune walkway at 5495 Highway 361 is consistent with the city's coastal management plan.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. This particular location is out, will be familiar to most of you. It's in the vicinity of the dune, the Grand Caribbean, multi-story project out there. This is the explanation relays, is a walkover and an area for the development is identified. It's important to note that all of the construction site area, and again, keep in mind, we don't have any development plans, just a site that will be for future development. But that area has no critical dunes, although it is in the dune protection area. One for the walkover, it's probably fair to say that this would have simply been a no dune determination. But again, because there is the walkover, we did require that there be a full dune permit. So, that's what you have, like I said, an area that is in the dune protection area that will see future development and a dune walkover. Again, also important to note is that this is another example where we've seen the design of these walkovers go up and over the dunes, whereas in the past, we oftentimes saw that there'd be cuts and they'd have to navigate through the dunes. But our engineers have done a really, really fine job of weaving them around, which is why sometimes you see their odd layout, very snake-like maneuvering, but it is a conscientious effort to minimize the impact. In these cases, they're going up and over. So again, planning and zoning approved. It is consistent with our coastal management plan. Everybody's, all the comments were reconciled to that effect, that it is consistent. So we recommend approval.
Yeah, just a question for you. And it was on all walkover deals, and it says the width and height of proposed dune walkover does not comply with the guidance that's from the GLO dune protection manual. So I went and looked it up. All of the proposed walkways are 10 feet wide, and the GLO guideline is 4 to 6 feet was the maximum their thing. Is our coastal management, do we have a 10-foot golf cart? Because they were all like showing walkover, and these are clearly going to be golf cart drivers. Is that a fair statement?
It is fair. And again, the operative word that you identified is that the deal has guidelines.
Sure.
And so that's always been the issue, is that the discussion with the width is being a safety measure. At what point, is it safer to have a wider one? And I assure you, all those things are discussed at the P&Z meetings.
Right.
You and Wendy, having been part of that, know. So it is a guideline. And so, like I said,
I guess my question is, how far out of the guidelines do we have to go before the GLO that says, look, y'all are not following the rules. We're gonna, start fighting them or whatever.
Until
And I have a question about that as well.
Yeah, until they make it specific, and in the opinion of either you as council or the planning and zoning, that it's not appropriate, or that it doesn't meet any of the somewhat difficult to interpret phrases such as minimization. Until that point, like I said, it's
well, it was, and it's the guideline, but it says it needs to be between 1 and 1.5 times the width, the height, so that makes that at least 15 feet above the dunes. 10 to 15 feet above the dunes in some spots. And I know there's like 2 of them, and this one is the next one that did not meet that. But anyway, it doesn't matter. It's just it's more of a philosophical discussion here than actual. Are we going to deny it because of that reason?
Well, can I speak to that, please? I also am wondering, the Cinnamon Shore one, that they did not make that comment. So obviously that one does follow the guidelines, and they make it with Grand Caribbean and the next one as well. And I don't know why we don't try to follow the guidelines, or what the issues might be in that case. And then another problem is that they have the planning for the entrance on the beach side too far out. Has that been changed?
We'll regulate.
Right, and let me, good catch, Councilman Holt. Let me tell you about on the all the terminus side, on the beach side, regardless of how that permit is approved, we always, we have in all the ones in the last several years made it a requirement that we go out with the applicant, and we stake off that to ensure that no matter how it's designed or drawn, that it is tucked back in. And so, like I said, we found that once before it became a problem, is that somebody wanted to push the design because it was approved that way. But it's clear in the motions now that we reserve the right to modify that terminus to make sure that it's not out any further than into the travelway or presents a danger. So that part, staff actually goes out there with the developer and stakes out before we allow them to see.
Why don't we just have them design it right to begin with?
Well, again, the dune, depending on our dune maintenance program, the dune sometimes during the fall is allowed to push out with low sand, and it grows until that dune may extend further out. And we have that maintenance area to work with when Public Works has an opportunity, they go back and work in that maintenance dune area to maintain that travelway, so that, sometimes that area can change. So we just ensure that it's tucked back in out of the travelway, consistent with the other walkovers.
I guess maybe one of the things is, and maybe we're confusing the dune walkover with the golf cart drive over. Maybe there needs to be 2 separate distinctions, and that will get us out of the GLO. All of that the flip side, it did say somewhere that we had a responsibility to limit private access to the beach somewhere in there. I did see that as a comment. Well, I understand, well, I
You
know.
are limiting it.
Well, that's the thing, I guess, they were, I don't know what the comment was. Remember,
The issue is to protect the dunes so that we don't have wash through. So whatever it takes to do it right to make sure the dunes are protected.
and I agree, that's the whole idea of the walkover or slash drive over is to protect the dunes.
Right, and again, you bring up an important point that was discussed at one of the planning and zoning meetings, and that is the fact that if they just chose to create a pathway or trail and just walk it down without going over the dunes, literally, eliminating that vegetation, kind of like in the old days, when you just walked through the dunes to get to the beach. The discussion of planning and zoning, which one's better? I don't have a strong feeling one way or the other. I don't have the expertise to determine that.
Sure.
But I understood the discussion is that, there's a potential impact if you just let everybody have a walkover, walk through, no, I'm sorry, not a walkover, but a walk through the dunes with a pathway, as opposed to one that, would serve a lot of people and for the most part go up and over. So again, as Bruce mentioned, in a sense, it is a philosophical discussion.
They're also, you gotta remember, their guidelines haven't been changed in probably 30 years, 25 plus years. And it's a guidance. It's them saying, we think a dune pedestrian walkover should be this. And it was probably accurate back in 1995 when everyone was just walking over the beach and dragging a cooler. But here we are, 2020, things have changed, our philosophy is it's still very much forcing minimization on these people that own the beach.
Yep.
And we're allowing them a 10-foot walkover. And we don't want all that traffic out on the highway, down the highway to 1, to the beach, all the way down in front of their property. We allow them to go over, transition over the dunes in a golf cart. And that's the best of both worlds for us.
Right.
Keep them off the highway.
I understand that.
Yeah.
I don't know how many of you have been out to Cinnamon Shore South, but if you could see the way they're creating their dune walkovers there, it's new and very different than the traditional way. And in my opinion, I'm no scientist, but seems much less invasive and minimizes the impact to the dunes. And I think they're going probably above and beyond what, some traditional dune walkovers have.
You're absolutely right. And that's why I said, when you look at when you really look at the drawing and you see they go to a greater expense to snake those things around. Obviously, the more lumber and the increased construction. So I do think that we've come a long way where you look at some of the old ones and they just went right through and just cut right through. So I do think that we're seeing a lot of effort and certainly a sensitivity, sensitivity to that and trying to work around the more critical dunes.
Motion to approve.
I'll second it.
Sorry, did you do that, Mayor? Motion to approve and a second.
Is the mayor there?
Where's this second? Where's the second?
Me,
Beth Owens.
Beth.
Beth,
Call the roll.
Councilmember Holt,
Yes.
Pro Tem Moore,
Yes.
Councilmember Solomon, Member Crawford,
Yes.
Mayor Bouillon.
Yes, sorry, guys. This damn, excuse my expression, damn phone has rang 24 hours a day here, driving me crazy. I have no idea.
We keep going?
Yes.
All right, item G. So again, item G is another dune permit. This is for 4 walkovers. This is again, a council, some of you that have been on council a while have seen this before. This is the part of the Brookdale property a little further south. And was originally approved, the original plan unit development was approved with 6 walkovers, if I remember correctly. And it kind of coalesced although at build out, there's quite a few houses that would be served in this development, but in discussions, basically the 6 as part of discussions in planning and zoning coalesced into 4. So that was originally approved. This is actually a renewal sorts of that one permit. Planning and zoning did this time around when it came back for renewal, did come back and did ask that the size of some of the observation decks be mitigated and moderated a little bit. Although approved the first time, again, it just shows you without them having been built, the second time around, planning and zoning again took a little bit different approach. There was some water and plumbing that was actually in some of them for whatever purpose was intended, but planning and zoning asked that be removed. So anyway, just like you said, it's constantly evolving. So the first time around, there was not an issue. The second time there was, so it became a little bit more moderate. But as I said before, they did a good job when you look at the aerial, in our opinion, as the reviewing engineers of weaving around the most critical dunes and coming up with the least intrusive effort. And again, the discussion was this 4 really needed, but when you look at the number of homes that will ultimately be served and the number of people, and you look at what we have historically done with respect to walkovers and how many there are along that beach, it really doesn't, it isn't a significant number, although it may appear so. And again, the PUD was originally approved with 6.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, I sat in one of the city council, planning and zoning meetings, and I don't remember if it was for Cinnamon Shores or for this one, where they were talking about they had more, and the mitigation was they were reducing the number of them. And my question is, just so you said that if they have a large development, is there any improvement coming back and adding 1 or 2 more in the future, other than they said that they wouldn't? I mean, things change, they come back in 10 years from now, 20 years from now and say, wow, we built out, and those things are constantly busy.
I don't remember, am I able to render a legal opinion on the question, but I know that it is in the minutes, and that was pretty much an agreed to condition. So how that would play if they came back and did have to get did need another dune permit, which they would obviously have to get, I would imagine that would come back into play. Is that, well, this was the agreement, this is in the minutes, this is why the other 4 were agreed to. I can't give you a definitive answer, but like I said, I do know that it is on record as to why this was why this was allowed to be wider and 4 in return for 6 that were perhaps a little bit more narrow.
I do remember that.
Right.
And does it have the golf cart and a side step where you can walk above it, or is that's in short? No, one there was a talk about they were going to have a lower part where you drive a golf cart and like a little 2-foot section that was raised up about 6 inches where pedestrians are out of the golf cart path.
I think a 10-foot wide, this presents both a cart navigable and pedestrian simultaneous walk, which I think Councilwoman Holt at one, or maybe it was Councilwoman Boulder back in the day that was concerned about the safety. So again, another philosophical discussion that I don't feel strongly one way or the other. I see both sides, but again, wider is a little safer if you're going to allow it. So like I said, there's pros and cons, but like I said, it has been done in the past, and like I said, planning and zoning approved, and it is consistent with our coastal management plan.
Okay, let's kind of move along here, guys. Let's vote on this.
There is a motion, Mayor, and a second.
Call the roll.
Councilmember Holt,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Moore,
Yes.
Councilmember Salamine,
Yes.
Councilmember Owens,
Yes.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Crawford,
Yes.
Mayor Bouillon.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay, dune permit, BFDP 200976. Discuss, take action to confirm that application submitted by BBD.
We just did that one.
H.
Pardon?
We're on item H.
We're on item H.
Board member,
Did that?
Yes, sir.
All right, good. Okay, item H.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Sorry about that, guys.
Advisory board.
I
Advisory board, so we have,
I can't hear you.
hold up, you got me? So we got airport advisory board, we have, 3 that are, wait, which ones are up? I thought red is up.
Well,
Why is Mark?
It's just Mark and John.
yeah, John Crampets and Mark Creighton, and John Crampets asked to resign, because I think he applied for one of the other boards. So it's just Mark Creighton with 2 or 1 shortage.
The form also says library board, so we might need to fix that.
Yeah, that's, airport. Fran, help me out here. Mark Creighton,
Mark
he's in
Creighton.
black, so
Mark Creighton is up this year.
he is up.
Yes. And he wants to be reappointed. And Mr. Krampitz has decided to resign from that position and only wants to be on the Parks and Recreation Board.
Okay, so we have John Krampus resigning. And then what about Grossi and Delaney? They're not up till next year, so they're still good.
Those are good.
So all we have to do tonight is reappoint Mark Creighton, correct?
Correct.
And then position 5 will be open, right?
Yes, and then we'll re-advertise for 5.
Okay.
Motion to approve Mark Creighton?
Yes.
And I'll second that. No, I can't even. Motion to approve Mark Creighton.
I'll second it.
So what happened is Krampus does not want it? Is that right?
No.
Resigning.
He does not want it.
Okay.
Yeah, he's gonna stay on Parks and Rec.
Councilmember Crawford,
Yes.
Councilmember Holt,
Yes.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Owens,
Yes.
Councilmember Salamine,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Moore,
Yes.
Mayor Bouillon.
Yes,
Motion carried.
okay, next item.
Third, 2 people up, John Krampitz, Sharon Grumbles, both seeking reappointment.
Okay,
And are there
And-
any additional?
Lisa Shelton.
right, I was gonna say, then we have, it's not on the form, but Lisa Shelton also applied.
And then Lisa Shelton has also applied for one of those positions. So your choices are John Krampitz, Sharon Grumbles, Lisa Shelton. So let's just go, we'll just go to each council member and each council member give 2 and we'll tally them up. Go ahead, Fran, call it.
Councilmember Clark,
Crampets and Grumble, I don't know. I don't know anybody else.
All right, Krampitz and Grumbles. Okay,
Mayor Bouillon,
Those that are seeking reappointment are fine with me.
okay, John and Sharon.
Councilmember Crawford,
John and Sharon.
Mayor Pro Tem Moore,
John and Sharon.
Councilmember Owens,
John and Sharon.
Councilmember Salamine.
John and Sharon.
Okay.
Okay, item J. Planning and Zoning Commission. There's 4 people up. Robert Tips, Nick Lorette, Frank Morgan, Jay Jones. Did Jay Jones, is he seeking?
He did not submit his application.
Okay, so Jay Jones did not submit. So you have Robert Tips, Nick Lorette, Frank Morgan, and then
Lisa Shelton.
Lisa Shelton, Chad Semitis, I don't think I said his last name right, and Kimberly Smith have requested to be considered for one of those positions.
They were looking for 4, is that correct?
I have,
so go ahead, Mayor.
I have, nothing against any of these folks, but I think our planning and zoning commission needs a change. And
I agree.
we can get people to try to volunteer for this. It certainly needs to be changed some.
And you also had Mallory.
Yeah.
What are we going to do about Mallory?
Since she was disqualified, is that?
Well, I mean, technically, she's in the,
Well, since she's on the BOA, and yeah, I guess can you serve on BOA and on?
No, you can't. She'd have to resign.
But she said that she was never informed that she was chosen for that commission.
We'll throw her in there. I mean, it's, so we're gonna go and everyone's given 4
Okay,
and I'll tally.
okay.
I did, real quick before, I know
Yeah.
we're all gonna get a chance to vote, but I mean, and I agree with what the mayor said. I do think that every once in a while, it's good to put fresh people on a board so that more people get involved in the community and have their chance. I will say, though, there are quite a few new people on P and Z already. And having some kind of continuity and history on the board, I think is also important. So, because you have right now, Mr. Kipke, who's new, Clark Smith, who's pretty new. Those are the 2 newer ones. Vanessa's been on a little bit, and I think she and Robert got on about the same time. And then Frank, maybe a year or 2 before. So that's just my 2 cents. I mean, rather than cleaning the slate of all old people and putting in all new people, I think that, it'd be prudent to keep some people with experience, particularly on P and Z, because it is a, it is a board that requires lots of knowledge. It's not something that's not, should be taken like.
I'm not suggesting that all these folks be replaced. I'm suggesting that year in and year out, this thing stays about the same way. Nick Lorette has been on this thing since 2006.
Well, we've had people on council for 9 years too.
Well, that's true. But don't you think other people would like to, we have Kimberly Smith, for example. Chad would like a spot on this thing.
I'll hold it. Now, I have a question. Is Kimberly Smith related to Clark Smith?
I can't hear.
We don't understand. We can hear, we just don't understand.
I was just asking if Clark Smith was related to Kimberly Smith. I'm not familiar with either one of them.
Well, I know Kimberly Smith. She's a member of my church.
Okay.
She is an environmentalist.
Okay, how do you, are we picking, what are we doing? Are we doing?
I think everyone votes for 4.
Okay. All right.
Let's do it this way. 3, let me see, if we do it for 4, we don't technically,
Is there an alternate on P and Z?
what if we did, everyone votes for 3 and we filled the 3 seats, then we went back and then selected the alternate.
Okay.
So Jay Jones is the alternate right now?
Yeah, he's.
Well, it doesn't say that.
It's
Oh, wait, no, he's not. Oh, okay, I was looking at the chart.
There's no
for some reason.
alternates.
Okay, you're right.
Well, who's number 7? Is that a 7-member committee?
Yeah,
Yes,
it's
sir.
7.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
everyone select 4 and all tally.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll go first. I'll throw it up there.
All right, Bruce.
Robert Tibbs, Nick Lorette, Chad Chimidas, and Kim Smith. So we get some new blood in there.
And then so Mallory's also on this list, by the way.
But that's fine. I'm
Okay.
gonna stick with what I got.
Next,
Councilmember Owens,
Beth.
Me, Robert Tips, Nick Lorette, Frank Morgan, and Chad Schmidas.
Councilmember
Frank,
Solomon,
pull up Frank and then Chad. Okay.
Councilmember Solomon,
Mallory Kay, Nick Lorette, Frank Morgan, Chad Schmidas.
What was
Okay.
your 4 again?
Mallory,
Mallory, Nick, Frank, Chad.
Mallory, Nick, Frank, Chad. Okay.
Mayor Pro Tem Moore,
Robert Tibbs, Nick Lorette, Frank Morgan, and Chad Schmidas.
Mayor Bouillon,
How about me?
Jay is not requesting on this.
Mayor.
Now, is he withdrawn?
yes, sir.
He has? Okay. I'd like to add Kimberly Smith in his place.
It's the last one.
The rest I'm all right with.
So you
And
reappoint
Who are your other 3, Mayor?
the 3?
The ones that are seeking reappointment.
Okay.
So,
Tips,
Robert,
Lorette.
Frank, Nick, is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
We really,
Yeah, haven't asked me yet.
we need to really, David, we really need to try to get other people to run for this very important board.
We've got plenty.
Okay.
We need to do something. Other people want to do it. And a chance. All right.
Okay, Councilmember Holt,
Mallory, Nick, Lorette, Frank Morgan, and Chad.
Okay, Chuck.
Tips, Lorette, Morgan, and Schmeider, Chad.
All right, so it's Frank, Chad, Tips, Lorette.
That's too bad.
Got some new blood on there.
Well, we got a new one.
Got one new one. Okay.
I can't hear a word you guys are saying.
They said they got one new person, Mayor.
Okay. You want to call the roll?
No, that's it. It was Lorette, Tips, Chad, and Frank
Okay.
were the top 4 vote getters.
All right.
Right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
okay, Mayor, item K.
Item K is the Recreation Development Corporation Board. And, it's council members. So we got Bruce wants to re-up, Joan Holt wants to re-up, Beth Owens said yes. And then that leaves us one council member we need to appoint. So we need one council member, Mayor and Joan.
You need
Well, I don't want to be on it.
One more council member needed for this.
So it's Chuck, Tom, and Duncan, rock, paper, scissors, see who wins it.
So who are the 3 council members that are not on here? It's Chuck, Wendy, Shannon,
That's it.
and the mayor.
Okay,
Put Shannon on it.
I'm withdrawing my possibility to be nominated. I vote for Shannon.
Shannon, are you stepping up or what? All right, so you're volunteering.
There you go. I'll second that.
Motion to approve.
I already seconded it. Motion to approve.
Second,
Second.
Councilmember Holt,
Yes.
Councilmember Crawford,
Yes.
Councilmember Clark,
Yeah.
Councilmember Owens,
yes.
Councilmember Salamine, Mayor Pro Tem Moore,
Yes.
Mayor Bouillon.
Yes.
Okay, unless something crazy, did we do that with PNC?
Well, we did a straw poll.
They did a straw poll.
Position.
Okay,
A motion for that PNC.
Right.
we're on what now?
Item L.
Okay. That's a resolution approving professional services. Task order agreement with Urban Engineering. Approving task order number 29 in a total amount of $113,584 for the Charlie's Pasture temporary bulkhead. Setting terms, conditions, fees, responsibilities, services of owner and engineer, and authorizing the city manager to sign said agreement. I hear a motion. Discussion.
This now, Ben just joined us.
Yes, this is Ben with the Broadus Del Sol recovery team. This task order is for Urban Engineering to do the design of the temporary bulkhead at Charlie's Pasture. The blowout there, we have land loss occurring at the nature preserve, and now it's affecting or threatening some of the infrastructure we have there. So before we finish the bulkhead, we're going to move forward and do this piece of the project first to protect the infrastructure there at the preserve, nature preserve. All this will be reimbursable under the FEMA Harvey Recovery Program.
Motion to approve.
Second. Call the roll.
Mayor second.
I'll second it.
Councilmember Holt,
Yes.
Mayor Bouillon,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Moore,
Yes.
Councilmember Salamine,
Yes.
Councilmember Crawford,
Yes.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Owens,
Yes.
motion carried.
Item M. Broadus and Associates will provide an update on Hurricane Harvey repairs.
Yeah, so as usual, I'm gonna go through, I'm gonna talk about the construction we have going on, design, our engagement with FEMA, and cash flow over the last month. So at Roberts Point Park, we've finished the bulkhead repairs. The observation tower is now accessible by the public. And the last piece that we need to do there is we need to finish up some of the sidewalk that runs along the bulkhead. And we need to finish the repairs that we're doing there at the small pavilion. The Chamber of Commerce building is moving along. We're at 70% completion on that project, and it's scheduled to be completed at the end of August. And Jerry McDonald Ball Field, we're at 85% completion on that project, and that also is scheduled to be completed by the end of August. Also, in the next 4 weeks, we will be advertising the construction of all 3 of the piers, Robert Point Park Pier, the Ansel Brundrett Pier, and the Charlie's Pasture Pier. We're going to be advertising that for bid for construction. We're going to be advertising the temporary bulkhead there along Charlie's Pasture bulkhead, and we will be advertising the high pressure gas system. With design, last week we had 65% design review on the Department of Public Works garage. Turner Ramirez Architects took our comments and we're moving forward there to reach 95% and 100% design. And for the fire station, we submitted our first appeal to FEMA about our justification on square footage and the size that we need for that building. So that first submission, our first appeal submission was done 2 weeks ago, and we are on our second and the last appeal process with FEMA for the public safety building. So, and FEMA's been engaging with us consistently on the public safety building. They really opened up the communication here because, as I've said on the last couple of council meetings, this is a decision is going to be made soon, and this is the last stage so that we can, here at Port Aransas, move forward with knowing what we have for design and what we're going to be building. And the final piece, the cash flow in the last 4 weeks, we received 1.7 million from FEMA, and that totals our total payout to date is $21 million that we've gotten reimbursement from through FEMA, and we have $350,000 right now in additional funds we're seeking from FEMA for reimbursement. And that is that's my updates today, unless there's any questions.
Hey, Ben.
Great, Ben. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, so on the piers, on the reconstruction of the piers, are those all going back like they were? Did we get mitigation on some of them to prevent some of the issues we had before? Are they concrete? Are they wooden?
Yes, yes. So the reason the piers haven't been done already is because we were working with FEMA to get Charlie's Pasture Pier. It was a wooden pier, and we proved that we need to go back with concrete. So that one will be concrete like the other 3. All 3 are going to be concrete piers. And the mitigation effort that we've done there at the piers is the walkways, instead of being, they're blowout walkways now. So instead of them being, stationed, bolted in on the superstructure of the pier, when surge comes, the walkways will blow out, they'll break away from the actual pier, relieving pressure so that structural damage of the piles and the structural foundation of those piers will not be damaged from future events. So those are the mitigation measures that we took for the piers.
And the Charlie's Pasture Pier will be able to withstand ship wake?
Yes.
That will be concrete, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. Any questions?
Thank you, Ben.
Thank
No,
you.
thank you.
Sounds great.
Okay, item N is a resolution authorizing a budget amendment for $1,000 for 2019. I'm sorry, guys. This blooming phone is driving me nuts. I'm having a guy call me and tell me I'm an idiot.
Darla,
Did you hear
are we
David?
pulling item in?
Same,
We're,
that's
po-
just-
we're, we're pulling item in. Yes. Kimberly.
In is, in,
All right, yeah.
that's pulled.
Now, just out of curiosity, not related, but are we gonna have time to finish this in the same budget cycle or budget year that you were planning on?
Probably not. The only thing we could find is it's so late in the year, all we could find is a GMC, and that's not what our fleet is. Sorry if you're a GMC fan.
And it was in Idaho.
Now's time to go.
Yeah, yeah. It's, what happens is the production of the 2020s, and they won't make the 2021s. They don't fire up the production line until all the new changes and modifications are in. And so this late July, August, like
The worst.
the terrible time, because they won't even take your order.
Hey, it's time to go to Toyota.
That's what I'd love to do, but
You know what? You're the man who's gotta make it happen.
so we're skipping item N. N is in Nancy.
All right, item O, update general discussion, possible action authorizing approving a venue project pursuant to Chapter 334 Texas Local Code for the development of a recreation center facility.
Who's jumping in?
Okay, well, actually, this fall I've missed all the.
Can you guys hear Bruce?
No?
Ms. Allmine's not missed all the past. Can we get like just a quick review of basically what happened and maybe if we have a copy of it? The draft resolution was not in the packet.
Yeah, it was in your, so yeah, I'll jump in and give a brief review. The rec center concept has been floating around, boy, I think for a long time, but when I got here in maybe 08 or 09, we drew up a real small one, and we even formed there was kind of an ad hoc rec group that formed. It didn't really go anywhere. And then finally in, I believe 2015, it started getting a little traction again, and it grew in 2016. Council actually authorized at the 2016 budget some funds to explore hiring Janak and Associates and to explore, drafting up some layouts and plans, not full-blown plans, but just some schematics and get cost numbers in case council wanted to, the following budget year, the summer of 2017, to pull the trigger and try to figure out how to fund the rec center, because the funding was a big question at that time. So over 2016, the fall of 16 and early 17, City Council worked with Janak and Associates to develop a schematic and come up with some cost estimates on what we think the square footage would be. And it was about probably getting into late winter. And then the funding problem still hadn't been solved. And we reached out to Mark McCliney, who has helped the city in the past with getting bonds. And he came up with the idea of passing, you would have to go to the voters. And he said, in August, council could approve taking it to the voters, and it would be a 2% tack on to your hot tax if it was a correctly designed venue. Now, the venue that we had kind of come up with over the winter on our own probably didn't necessarily meet the venue definition because like the bleacher seating wasn't large enough. So we had to bolster to meet that definition of a venue that would bring in outside people, and that would be whether it was for a volleyball tournament or a basketball tournament or a cheerleading tournament, what have you. It needed to be sized a little bit bigger. So we upped the size to where we thought it would meet the definition of a facility that could bring in, put heads in beds and meet the comptroller's definition, because you got to send it off to the comptroller and he signs off on it. So we worked all that spring and summer. We worked on getting the venue sized correctly to where we thought we needed to be. And then we submitted it in July of 2017. We submitted it to the comptroller, and it was and if you go back and look, it was called the Comptroller Resolution, which was adopted July 31st and sent to the comptroller. It was approved, and then that gave us the green light to go to a November special it would have been a special election for us. That's right. So it would have been a November special election. It did pass it at City Council, and a week later, the hurricane hit. Great timing. And then I believe in early September, we canceled the special election because it was just no way to pull it off. So the idea, when we were in hurricane mode, we were all sad and depressed about everything. But it was just, we knew 2017 rolled around, 2018, the timing went there, 2019, it's a little better now, and then you have another disaster. So here it is before you now to discuss it again. And it always, it's.
Didn't we have a survey? We've done
surveys. There was a lot of community input. It wasn't just a council idea.
No, it was.
I mean, there really was, and we would have packed houses, and there was a lot of, so I feel like it was a community supported thing, particularly with the funding, right? I mean, I think at the first part, you're right, and people are like, well, I don't want to raise my property taxes, and I don't, to do it, and I get that. But when we found the source to pay for it through the increase in possible hot tax, and then that increased projection would have it paid off in, it was like 3 or 4 years. I mean, or it's just quick.
And then, so the way it works is that once the hot tax pays off the debt, and I think it was about, does anyone remember the number? Was it around 12?
3 years.
It was about 12 million.
Was it? I didn't get it that high.
No, it was higher. By the end of it, it was higher.
The projection was only like a 5-year payout.
Right, it was like a 5-year. So what happens is that once you pay it off, that hot tax drops back down to 13. Because if we're at 13 now, it would go up to 15, and then it drops back down to, and Colleen, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, Colleen, I was just explaining about the hot tax, how it drops back down, and you had done a little bit of research, right, on where other people are sitting on their hot tax?
Yeah, I just did a quick Google search, and so 6% goes to the state. I believe Darla would probably be a better resource for this, but I believe we're at 7%. San Antonio, Galveston, Austin, their hotel motel tax is at 9%. So everybody's averaging a 15% rate. We're a little lower. We're like 2 points lower than where those other cities are right now.
Now, I had a question.
At Rockport.
I'd have to look
Rockport
that
or-
up. I just did a quick, Texas city hotel motel tax search, so I'd have to look.
I'm gonna look it up.
Of course, in
Thanks, Sarah.
2016,
No, use your microphone so they can.
of course, in 2016, when we, when they were designing it, just a temporary design to see how much cost Parks and Rec was gonna be housed in the recreational center.
Yes, that's correct. Beth made a point,
Because it was a mobile home at
that,
that time.
right,
The rec
that
center.
Parks and Rec would be in it. And they are still homeless, by the way. They're in
I
the
know.
Nature Preserve
I
building,
know.
not the Parks and Rec
know.
building.
But that was our intention.
Yeah.
Now, another question that was brought up, I think, you said basically if this goes to the voters and they approve it, then we have pretty much break ground pretty quick. Is there a way that we can,
Oh, I'm sorry.
is that true statement, or can we say on the ballot, the hot tax will start in June, July, or whatever, so we can kind of, I understand that right now is a bad time, even if they were to approve it, we want to be out there digging in November, because we still got other things we need to address, but is that something that we could do? Can it be like a 6-month postponement, or do we
No,
have to?
Well, they give you time, it's built into the law. They give you time they know you gotta go to design, they know you gotta go to architecture, they know you gotta have community input. And so they give you time to go into your design, get your design done. That could be, but the rule is I think start your action pretty quick because you're having architect fees and
sure
you have to start once you pass it, I believe the last time, and I will double check with Mark, but I think you start collecting it pretty quick and you're not allowed to bankroll it. You can't just shove it in a bank for 2 years and then kind of wait. You have to move. You have to be on a scheduled path. You can't just sit there and stick hot tax in a savings account, waiting to see if you're gonna someday pull the trigger on it. You have to be.
But I do think it would make people upset in the community if they saw that, we have a brand new rec center, but the police don't want a mobile building or something to that effect. And
Say that again?
I said, I do think that people would be unhappy if they saw that we had a brand new rec center for people, but the police or whatever were still in a mobile building.
Oh, the police.
Yeah, I mean, just example.
Just like a softball field is getting built, but not the police station.
Yeah, I mean,
and it's the nature of the beast. We're in a bit where, our three big, the fire EMS, police, and our big gas line, FEMA's really fighting us on those. We're basically in court with them. It's an appeal process, but that's the nature of the beast.
I understand that, but this is like criticism that I have, that I just know in the past, even like when we were trying to do it wasn't Ross Street, but was it not Piper Lord? What's the one over here to take out Charles Pasture? What's that protocol? Port Street. So when we were doing the thing, they were all like, well, Port Street is, somebody lives on that and we need to, that one needs to be done last because optics look bad if we did it first.
Well, I mean, we're rebuilding so much right now. I mean, we're rebuilding.
It's gonna be a brand new town.
We're rebuilding 80% of the city's infrastructure. What's first, second, third? To me, it's all irrelevant right now. I mean, we're breaking ground for apartments in about 20 days.
You got two different animals here too. Because obviously with the municipality buildings, that's something we don't have a lot of control with this hot tax increase to 2%. And we've already seen in the last 2 months what's going to happen when this place is open and running and safe. It's going to be Be crazy. Yeah, so with that said, if it's in place with that 2%.
I mean, I think we saw it with Harvey. I mean, we're very blessed that I think, you know, I mean, we're lucky that we live in the coast and not in the middle of the country.
I would like to have Chuck's comment repeated.
Chuck, can you repeat yours in your microphone a little bit louder?
I'm sorry, Joan, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, no, I just made a comment that, you know, with the municipality buildings and some of the infrastructure that we're currently trying to build back, we're under the mercy of FEMA, unfortunately, and we're battling to do that. With the rec center, that was another revenue source, was the increase of the 2% occupancy tax. And what we've seen in the month of May and June, under this COVID pandemic situation, is that, you know, this place has a lot of, in reference to revenue and hot tax, if we can utilize our resources, I mean, I think it will support itself and pay itself entirely. That's my thought.
Just to let y'all know, you asked Rockport, is it the same rate we are, 13%? South Padre's at 17%. I don't know if you said that one.
Or what?
14. Let's say they've got 7.
Sorry, my dog started barking. 17%. My husband left and now they're going nuts. 17%.
You were down there. What got them to 17? Their big convention center?
She just.
Okay, I closed my door because of them. No, it wasn't their convention center. Hold on, I can tell you what it is. Their breakdown is they have 8% for their CVB. They have 0.5% for beach nourishment, 2% for venue tax, which was added after I left. And I can't remember what that is. I think they're trying to build I think it was a parking garage somehow. I need to check on that. And then Cameron County, the county has 0.5%.
Okay.
And there was a big battle with that, but it's a total of 17%.
I didn't even think you could go that high.
Apparently.
It's really high. I remember there's been a lot of battles over it the last few years, but they got some special approvals.
Wow.
Well, I think it's an opportunity for the hotel, for the tourists, the hotel tax to pay something that a lot of the locals are gonna use, and Winter Texans, and having facilities for all ages, from young to old, to the police officers having a great facility, and firefighters to keep in good shape and work out. And, you know, and especially during a time like this, we all know how stressful it is. We all need to exercise more. And yes, we do live in a beautiful town with outdoors we could do, but having a facility indoors and classes and education and
Not rusty workout equipment.
Yes, I think, and I mean, yes, is it any gonna be a good time? We put this on hold for 3 years. This is something like you said, Dave. I mean, this is 10-year plus. I mean, I've been on the island.
I'm sorry, this goes on 24/7.
Health department.
And
Keeps me up all night long with idiots.
it is also
Have a mute button on there?
I got a mute button,
for
but then I get the messages on email. Thousands of them.
It was in the vision.
To live.
It was in the Vision 2020 statement that the Port of have a recreation center, so it's not like we're that project or whatever.
You mean the 99 vision?
Yeah, it was
statement?
the 2000.
Oh, 2000.
Well, it wasn't 99, but it was the 2000
Yeah,
statement.
it started in 99.
Yeah.
But it was for their vision for what 2020 would have, right? Wasn't it?
I thought it was just
No,
Vision.
that was just the
Vision
vision.
2000.
Um,
That's called 2000 Vision statement.
But I mean, I think at this point, we take it to the public. I mean, I
You know,
think a
it's-
lot of people are from the November election, and it would be a good opportunity to vote.
Mm-hmm.
My thought is no, then we got it. And if it's yes, then we move forward. Put it to the voters.
I looked at the 98, 99 vision statement, and a rec center is in there. They wanted a rec center back then.
It's been more than you for a long
Well,
time.
do you guys at least want to take it to the next step? I mean, so the next step would be I would have to get with Mark McCliney, and I talked to him today, and we would have to reach back out to the comptroller. He's researching tonight and tomorrow. He's supposed to get back with me on what the status of that comptroller letter, if it had an expiration date on it. So that I don't know. It probably does. So you would probably have to redo that step, but ultimately you would get it back to your, Fran, what's our August date for council?
The 20th, I believe.
20. So you would
20th,
take it
yes.
back to the, once you got past that step, it's a two-step process. You get the comptroller resolution passed. It goes to the comptroller. It comes back to the city, and then the city would put the ordinance on there calling for a venue project election in accordance with chapter 334. So that would be on your August council meeting. And then if you guys approved it at that date, it would be on the ballot in November. And then the citizens vote up or down.
So let me just put this in perspective, because I know when people hear about additional tax, right, no matter where it comes from, it's a very scary thing and nobody wants to pay additional tax on anything. But when you put it in perspective, I mean, this is not a tax burden on our citizens, our taxpayers, you know, even our second homeowners who own property here. It's a tax on the visitors. And of course we have to sell it as a sports complex, which I think it very well could be, right? Depending on whether we use the same design or something else. $150 room night in Port Aransas, just say average, right? I mean, because I think we have everything from $50 to $300 room nights, right? Depending on the type of year. But for a $150 room night, 13% tax is about $20. Right? That's what they're paying in addition to the 150. If we go up to 15% hotel motel tax, it's an additional $2 or $3. I don't feel like that is significant enough that it's going to all of a sudden make tourists or people who come and spend motel room nights in Port Aransas, you know, oh my gosh, I can't, I'm not going to go there anymore because they have a high hotel motel tax.
Right,
So
$3 difference.
it's a $3 difference. So I think you have to put that in perspective, right? I mean, I think a rec center is a fabulous idea for our community. And I don't know if now is the right timing or not, but I would like to see sometime, it be done. It won't be ready for my children, but hopefully it'll be ready for future generations' children. And like that said, I mean, everybody in the community, but also be able to, bring us support throughout the rest of the year. But I think that's what you have to do, because when it comes down to it, it's money, right? And where are we going to come up with the money? So if it's a $3 increase for the average tourist that comes per night, I don't think that is a huge burden to put on them. And so that's just my financial perspective.
I agree. And also, and just something that we talked about in the past is, what's something to bring long-term people in Port Aransas and stuff for the kids to do instead of going out to the beach and drinking. They have a place to go that's safe. So I'm for it. So if we need a resolution or a motion, I make a motion to approve a resolution to move forward.
Do we need to vote on this?
Second.
Do anybody second?
Yes,
Yeah,
you'll
I'll
need to
second
vote it. We'll need to look at the election dates for
Yeah, so
calling.
motion was made by Bruce, seconded by Beth.
To move forward.
Let's call the roll.
Next step, which would be the comptroller resolution.
What are we voting on?
Motion, Joan, the motion was to move forward with the next step, which would be the comptroller's resolution.
For the rec center.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yes, sir. And then it was seconded by Beth.
Joan, you okay with that? Where's Joan?
Are you talking to me?
Yeah. Did you have a question about that?
Well, we're just going to the next step. We're going to find out whether the comptroller still have. I don't have a problem with that.
All right. Any other discussion on this?
Councilmember Holt,
Yes.
Councilmember Crawford,
Yes.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Owens,
Yes.
Councilmember Salamine,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Moore,
Yes.
Mayor Breon.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay. Item number 8. City manager report. P is an update and general discussion of the city of Port Aransas COVID-19 coronavirus response and recovery efforts.
Okay, just to give everyone a breakdown of where we're at. So I just got word from Lieutenant Stokes. We've been working on getting the beach ready today, following the judge's order that came out yesterday. The judge's order was two parts. It was a people curfew, nighttime beach person curfew from 8:30 p.m. to 6 a.m. And the dates are starting tonight, July 16th through Saturday at midnight or August 1st, 6 a.m. And that was the first part. The second part of her order was a vehicular access starting tonight at 8:30 and then running also through August 1st, Saturday morning, August 1st. So we've been working real hard today, getting signage up. This is kind of a repeat of the 4th of July order. It's almost exactly the same. It differed a little bit in Corpus. So at least we knew what the drill was. So Public Works and the police have been working all day, getting the berms up, getting the barrels, getting all our signage. We kind of revamped Access Road 1A, which is our entry point for ADA, because we needed to make a little bit better effort on the ADA placards, because last time it was a lot of them were getting through and there were some homemade ones and 16-year-olds in the car with a placard for an 80-year-old. So we're going to try to do a little bit better effort on that. So that's all, it's all going good. The report from Stokes is that the beach is about 95% clear. So because I think they started about 45 minutes ago, so they're working that. So it's going to take a big effort because it takes a lot of effort to man. You're manning. People want to drive over it. There's a lot of big trucks in Texas that like the giant, like the challenge of driving over a giant sand berm and plowing in the barrels. And so we have to monitor them. So it's a lot of work on our part. We are, Darla's making sure that the police, Public Works, we're all logging our hours that we're putting into the COVID, and then we'll apply it to our $230,000 COVID allowance that we're getting from the state. So we are monitoring everything. So we'll get a reimbursement for the extra overtime that Public Works, EMS, police have to put in, signage, any materials. So we are monitoring that.
But you also get money from the beach fund because they're basically working the beach.
Well, I mean, Darla will differentiate what's just a normal beach hour versus what is extra work we're having to do for COVID. So she'll monitor that real close and track it, and then we'll, whatever we can apply to COVID, we'll apply to COVID.
Sure.
Because it's basically like FEMA. So it's like when you have a high tropical storm water event and FEMA comes in and says, oh, you have a high water natural disaster. We do the same thing. So we're used to it.
Okay.
Darla and the guys know how to log, and the gals know how to log their timesheets correctly. So we'll be tracking that. Darla, did you have anything you wanted to jump in on that?
No, not really. I mean, Chief and I even talked about it yesterday. They're doing their 214s. We're doing exactly what we have to do to FEMA, and we'll differentiate between the two.
Okay. And then other COVID activities, the mask order is still in effect. I'm hoping that starts paying dividends, and today our count was 329. Yeah, 329, so it did drop. That's hopefully,
It's 329 today, as total of almost 8,000.
yeah, so hopefully we'll see that trend. I mean, I think the governor's goal is to hope to see that trend drop before it starts. He did come out yesterday and announced, he kind of backed off the school opening a little bit and gave TEA a little bit of breathing room with the schools. At first, it was, he was gonna be a lot tougher on funding if you didn't try to open, but he's back off a little bit and given the ISDs a little bit of breathing room so that they can each kind of decide on their own what is best for them. So I think you have to have your health district person sign off on that if you want to do a delayed opening. So you're starting to see some delayed openings throughout the state. It's varying district by district. Sharon McKinney called me this afternoon, but I missed her call, so I'm not sure.
And that said that not virtual until after Labor Day.
Yeah, she said in the text message, and it said that the local health authorities for Nueces County issued an order prohibiting all on-campus classroom instruction until after Labor Day. And because we're in Nueces County, we will be online for the first 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So did you hear that, Mayor and Joan?
Yeah, I knew that.
Yeah, so it's at home online learning until after Labor Day for now. I'm not sure if do we have a start date, Rick? Did she give us
August
the 18th?
18th.
Just for kids to report? Yeah. So start date looks like the 18th. And then, what other COVID? Fran, do you have anything, or Rick, anything else?
Are we hiring, or is it state police officers or helping out troopers?
Troopers helped out on the 4th.
I know they helped out on the 4th, but are they?
They're not. I talked to Stokes. They won't help with what they need to help with. They come down here and they're gonna do their own thing. And so it didn't serve the mission they've got right now. So Stokes.
Yeah.
Everybody will be peaceful and not.
Isn't that what everybody wants? They want the golf cart patrol on the highway. So if they're out there patrolling the 361, enforcing golf carts, and our guys are on the beach, that make everybody happy, apparently.
They wouldn't be enforcing the golf cart.
Yeah, because it's not state law. Yeah, I don't think they were that big of a.
It's to show a force, keep people.
Yeah, it is. I mean, that's about what it is.
You don't know how the public's gonna be.
I did request that the city of Corpus Christi either put a disclaimer on their dashboard, especially when it comes to Port Aransas numbers, because a lot of people are quoting that number, which hasn't changed. It's still showing 21. Either put a disclaimer on there or take that off, or make some kind of reference to not rely on that data, because people are using it to kind of in a disingenuous fashion to indicate how things aren't that bad.
Are you referring to the Port Aransas count?
The Corpus Christi has a dashboard that shows the breakdown by jurisdiction. It shows Port Aransas as with the others. I did ask them to either.
Yeah, they've
And
stopped.
they're busy. I understand that they can't keep it updated. We put a disclaimer on there, so
Sure.
So we'll see.
Oh, sorry, I just didn't know we were talking about DPS and all that.
Is it still by zip code?
We'll see the hotel.
Anywhere?
Condos.
Rick said it is by zip code.
Should be the proper number or not?
Well, I will say, I looked at the weather.
She was asking if that was the proper number.
All week, so that may actually be.
Rick said it's wrong.
What about this weekend?
What's wrong?
Weather underground, and I don't know.
The 21 is wrong?
We're talking about the weather, Mayor. We were just wondering what the weather was this weekend.
Oh,
Good Saturday, and then
I can barely hear you guys.
it's supposed to be good weather on Saturday, but a chance of rain Sunday through next Friday.
Yeah, it looks like a lot
Subject to change.
Yeah, a lot of rain in the forecast.
And that'll make a
Good.
difference in the beach or blocking the beach.
It will. Anyway, so we are coordinating closely with the county, with City of Corpus. So the lines of communication are open. And if you guys see anything out of place, just give me a call. I'm around all weekend. So let me know your concerns.
Yeah, we have multiple cases in Port Aransas already. No, Annette Rodriguez has been briefing me on it.
You guys ready to move to item Q, Mayor?
You got it.
Okay. Actually, it's item number 9, is it not? The workshop. Q, update and general discussion on items discussed at the City Council priorities and goals workshop and any future budget requests from City Council. Please speak up on this so Dan Parker can get off of my case about all of that. So he wants to find out. So let him know.
Darla, did you have any updates to give council?
No, nothing since Monday. If anybody has thought of anything since then, we have our meeting August 6th. So we can put things on that meeting too if we have to for the rec center.
And then what's our date for hearing from the appraisal district?
Well, it's supposed to be certified by the 25th, which is a Saturday. So I think they will have till the 27th. I'm hoping to have it a little before that. Hopefully Friday the 24th.
Yeah, sometimes they give it to us early, but we'll see.
Yeah, it just depends.
I spoke to Ronnie Canales on this, and there will be no break for COVID.
No, they want that money.
Yes, sir.
That money.
It's always money over health.
All right.
Got
Other comments?
All right.
Hey, next.
Okay. The money lady.
Yes, you ready for my staff report?
Yes, thank you.
So the good, can y'all hear me? I
Yes.
just switched computers. Okay.
Yeah.
The good thing is the occupancy tax has really rebounded. Of course, we were covered up in May once everything opened up. May, we are 36% above what we were last, 664,000 compared to 488. We were 75% greater than we were in the month of 2000, for the year 2018. So we're only down 6% for the fiscal year to date with the 3 big months remaining. The sales tax also had a big boom, up 36%. So we went down from 30% for the year to only down 23%. And just like in hotel motel tax, our big months are the summer months. So that's when you can make up a lot of your ground. And I didn't put a harbor report in there because I've got some things with the harbor clerk was out and trying to figure out some things and some billing adjustments, but our beach parking permits were definitely up for the year about 8%. Of course, we shouldn't be selling any this week, so that should slow down, which Corpus is running out. We only have 3 more cases and they said they're waiting on bids to get them done, but they're running out of permits and they give us our permits. So,
Okay.
If you have any questions.
I was just gonna say the June numbers are also gonna probably look really pretty good, but the July is gonna stink again.
Possibly. Mhm. I think people were still here quite a bit, but.
I went to the beach yesterday, this morning, and it was absolutely wall to wall people as far as I could see. And this was on Thursday morning.
Yes, some Mondays and Tuesdays and Wednesdays have been crazy busy. Whereas in a lot of summers, you don't see that.
Mondays, I think it's a holdover the weekend with people left.
Well, I'm unrelated, but I'll say real quick, a quick anecdote. In Myrtle Beach, they actually tell me the slowest days are Saturday and Sunday because people leave Sunday, fly in, Saturday, they leave Saturday, and then new people arrive in on Sunday. So you get that whole beach over there from, Sunday, Saturday, and they fly home. It's July as well. We're getting where the weekends are not busy, but not as busy, but the weekdays are pretty solid.
Yeah, it's been an entertaining summer. My daughter and wife are battling waitress jobs. Like, oh, how does he make? How does he make? Stop asking.
Mhm.
Darla, thank you. That sounds better news than I would have thought, but let's hope it continues. We don't know.
Right. We'll see.
How about our police chief? Oh, Lord.
Hello.
Let's get.
Do we have a report?
Yeah.
We have a
Yes.
report in the file, but Chief's not here.
I think he's on right now.
Yeah, I'm on.
Chief, yes.
Oh, here's Chief. Came on.
Okay, y'all have a copy of the report in front of me. I
Yes.
don't have a lot of significant events to point out to you. July was a very busy month for us. If you look at the comparisons to last year, we're down about 100 calls. But considering that all the bars were closed, that we were shut down for 4th of July weekend, and that we were down more officers for the entire month, the remaining guys were running like crazy. I wanted to just take a second to thank Councilwoman Owen, Silver Sands, Property Management, Karen Steve, Porte Pizzeria, and the Subway shop here in Port Aransas. They all took very good care of our officers over the holiday weekend. We were too busy to be able to go get food, but they brought in and catered for us, and we're very appreciative of that. Anybody have any questions or anything?
Yeah, I do have a question, Scott.
Sure.
The car break-ins here lately seem to be a number of them. Have we caught those guys yet?
Mostly what we're running into are transient car burglars. We have put a couple in jail, but they're down here for 2 or 3 days from San Antonio or Austin or Houston, so they're pretty hard to track down.
Yeah. Our fire chief's car got broken into. Well, actually, it wasn't his car. He borrowed a buddy's car, and they got a satchel and a city
His radio.
Fire truck,
Or, his iPad. No, not his iPad, but his
City
telephone.
cell phone.
Yeah.
Well, Marin, it's a good opportunity to remind people that, if we can people would just lock their doors, we could cut our break-ins by 50%. 50% or more of our break-ins in town are people going through unlocked doors. So,
is that right?
That's all it takes would be people just simply locking their doors, and we can cut it in half.
My doors are locked and my windows are locked, and I have a 9mm sitting here for them.
How about your car? Do you lock it? That's what they're stealing from.
The what? Joan?
From your car.
My what? I can't hear
I said,
you.
do you lock your car?
Do you lock? I always lock my car.
Okay.
It's got an automatic lock on it, actually. All I have to do is get out and it shuts down.
All right. What else? I think it's dinner time.
I agree.
Council comments.
Motion to dismiss.
Appreciate everyone.
Yep. Great job, team.
Good
Yeah,
job
thank you.
again.
Staff, I
Again.
know it's a hard life out there.
All right.
Right.
Dinner.
When
It is. Hang in there.
I guess we can adjourn. On to the races.
How's Bear doing, Darla?
He's doing very good. Thank you. He actually got to drive and he went to the airport. So.
All right, tell him about him.
Yes.
Yeah.
I will. Thank you.
bang it, Wendy, bang it.
No,
Bye, y'all.
I think the mayor left.
Good night, you all.
He adjourned.
You adjourned. Hey, Jamie.
Mayor, are you checking out?
Yeah.
He's gone.
No.
Thank
Guys.